Hello, welcome to Beauty and the Brains. I am Nicole Anderson, and on this channel I discuss the horror genre in literature while doing my makeup at the same time. It's a lot of fun. Oh, and happy Halloween! Happy Halloween! Happy Halloween! It's Halloween, you guys, and I'm really happy about it. I told myself that I would do 4 videos on this channel during the month of October, and I did it. I didn't think I would be able to. I was a little nervous, but I did it. I did 1 video about once a week or so. Don't really know, but I did 4 videos this month, and that's kind of the goal I have for every month from now on. But don't worry, just because it's Halloween does not mean that in November I'm not going to do spooky material, because I am. This channel, it is the spooky season every season. Okay, so rest assured, if you come to my channel, you will get spooky material. Today, we will be talking about Stephen King's Danse Macabre, as well as some back history about what Danse Macabre is. Sit back, relax, and let's get spooky. Let's do some background on Stephen King. He was born in 1947, so he is 73 years old today. His books have sold over 350 million copies, of which have been adapted into films, TV, miniseries, and comic books. He has published 61 novels. Yikes. This includes 7, which was under a pen name of Richard Bachman. He also has 5 non-fiction books, including Danse Macabre. Jesus Christ, 61 books. 61 books. He has like a book for nearly every year of his life. He has also written about 200 short stories. I mean, come on. You cannot deny he is a fantastic writer. A lot of negative criticism on his work is that he produces too much work. Like, okay, that they say their argument is that there's too much quantity and not enough quality. And you know what I have to say about that? Well, actually, no, I'm not going to say anything at all, because if you can't say something nice, then you shouldn't say anything at all, right? Right. He has received the Bram Stoker Award, as well as the National Book Foundation for the Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters. Actually, you know what I have to say to his critics? Y'all some jealous bitches. Now, I usually don't address my skin or what makeup products I'm using while I do these videos, because like I said in my previous videos, it does deflect from the books. I'm just gonna go ahead and deflect right now, alright? So, deflecting. My skin looks a little bit like a lizard skin, and that is because I'm going through some acne therapy with La Roche-Posay products. It's basically just burning off the first layer of my skin to just get rid of the acne scarring and melasma from puberty and whatnot, and some hormone therapy that I've stopped, thankfully. So that's why my skin looks a little bit iffy today, so therefore maybe the foundation will look a little bit more cakey than it did in the previous videos. I'm not apologizing or anything, it's just the way that people's skin is. I'm not like a celebrity or anything with access to really amazing skincare or really amazing Photoshop skills. Now, deflecting time is over. Let's get back to the video. He was born in Maine, which is the setting for most of his novels. Maine sounds like such a lovely place, doesn't it? It sounds so peaceful. Like, even though he has so many monsters and scary stuff, and I've heard from people who have visited Maine, there's some spooky stuff that goes on, but I just love that. Like, I'm like, yes, ghosts. I want this old Victorian house where I'm just sitting in my room and I hear something and I'm like, this is good. But that's just me. We need to discuss, what is Danse Macabre? What does it mean? Where does it come from? Danse Macabre is French for the dance of death. I really do hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, and if not, then it is an artistic genre of allegory in the late Middle Ages. No matter who you are, poor, rich, your ethnicity, your race, etc., we all die, and that's a really peaceful thought. I mean, at least for me it is. Worms are gonna eat my corpse just like how they will to Jeff Bezos. We have to remember that in the late Middle Ages, there was intense wealth inequality. I mean, not much has changed. There was an excuse back then as to why the king had so much more money than the villagers, because, well, that's what God wanted. But really, joking aside, kings and their court were seen as to have been favored by God. But, somebody in medieval France was like, if God really favors kings, then why do they die just like the rest of us? The French were good thinkers. Hey, maybe God doesn't actually choose kings or favors them at all. The French got real freaky with it, and they started to make artistic allegories about death. Typically, death would be drawn dancing with a child, an emperor, a laborer, you know, just about everybody that was represented in a town. Just to show people that it really is everybody that dies. No one is saved from death. And they would always show death as a skeleton. It would always be referred to as a he, even though it's a skeleton. It's just bones. There's another note to make here that the Danse Macabre was also used as a memento mori, which is Latin for death reminder. People back then were like, hello, hey, yeah, Gwendolyn, lovely day to milk your cow, isn't it? Oh, don't forget that you could probably have your house burned down today and be tried and killed for witchcraft. Bye! It was a very Catholic thing. There was also a very strange plague that occurred nearly a century after the creation of Danse Macabre. This plague happened in 1518 in what is also today's France. Like I said, people were getting freaky with it in France. So about 50 to either reportedly 400 people danced until their death. So they danced so much that they died, which sounds sensationalist history. It doesn't sound like it's real in history. It began with a woman, and the people in town were like, oh, that's not normal. But it is noted that the plague mostly attacked women, which I cannot help but think that these stuffy ass white men in this town, which by the way used to be in Strasbourg, today's France, we know what men were like back there. We know. They were stuffy old ass white men who did not like that some young women were dancing because they were like, no, Jesus, I only have eyes for Jesus. That's what it was usually like back then. Old men were only into Jesus, and they did not like when women were getting all sexy with it. But there's a more scientific side to this particular story. Some believe that these women were just experiencing intense food poisoning. And now I know you're probably like, Nicole, I've had food poisoning before. You don't dance until you die because of food poisoning, but just hear me out. Poor villagers had a consistent diet of rye, potatoes, mushrooms, things like that they would farm on the daily and cultivate, right? Well, as we all know, it is common for ergotamine, the organic chemical structurally related to lysergic acid diethylamide. Alice motherfucking D. I'm living for this. Like, these women were just tripping balls, having a good time for once, just dancing, and everyone else was like, Satan is among us. It's just so funny to me. Actually, no, it's sad because they all died, but still. Okay, so time to get to the actual book by Stephen King. Let's see if Nicole can do her eyeliner and talk at the same time. Danse Macabre by Stephen King was published in 1981, and it was his very first non-fiction book. Why'd I say it like that? It is told in layman's terms because he says he wanted to, quote-unquote, avoid academic bullshit. Which I just really love that he says that because he was actually a university professor for quite some time. I feel you, Stephen King. I feel you. But despite his attempt to avoid academic bullshit, it essentially is a thesis essay about horror fiction in print, TV, radio, film, comic books, literature, and the influence of contemporary societal fears and anxieties on the genre. The edition that I have is the one that was republished in 2010 with the additional new essay called What's Scary? What is scary? I don't know. Do you know? Basically, What's Scary, I loved that essay because it describes that scary is a subjective thing. therefore it is an art form. Horror is an art form. It's a way of storytelling, but lately it has been a form of visual art. I mean, obviously since like the medieval times, even before that. You know, we have these memento moris, we have these horrifying things in our human history that constantly remind us that horrifying stuff happens day to day. Some of us, like myself, we like to consume horror and we like to remind ourselves that horrifying things happen, but we don't like to watch the news. We don't like to witness images of warfare. We don't, that stuff, that is what horrifies me. No, I don't want to watch the news. But I am totally for a 10-foot tall clown devouring children. Yay! That I'm for. I like to watch that stuff because I know it's not real. And it scares me, but it scares me in an entertaining way. He talks about how there's absolutely nothing wrong with this kind of mindset. That no, we're not going to be the schoolyard bully. We're not going to do horrendous things. We're not going to become Jeffrey Dahmer because we like to watch horror. And, you know, unless your mom's from America, then that's what you think. But I've come across very few people who actually think that, thankfully. I've met some horror fans that their whole family is like totally against them consuming horror and they just don't get it. And so this essay is a really great argument for anybody who is trying to put that into words of why do I like horror? What is about it that is almost comforting? So if you struggle with trying to voice that to any family members or friends who just don't get it, just have them read that essay or just have them read the whole book while they're at it, because it really explains it in a very concise way. Sorry about the lighting quality just getting worse and worse. Well, actually I don't know if it's getting worse until I edit, but I for some reason decided to record this video at sunset. So in Danse Macabre, he slightly covers the Victorian era and he primarily focuses on Dracula by Bram Stoker. He mostly focuses on the 1950s through 70s though. He also primarily focuses on these decades, specifically in the United States. He's not only just giving a rundown of the history of these eras, but also his emotional ties to them. Like I said, he is 73. He grew up during this era of horror fiction. Basically everything you see behind me, all of these movie titles, these are classic B horror movies from the 50s, which is also referred to as Atom Age horror. We're after the war and everything is atomic. Unfortunately, that's how World War II ended. Everything was Atom Age horror, gigantic ants, we now have Godzilla, we have all this stuff, we have Gigan, we have Mothra, we have Rodan, and these stories severely affected the American public. A, because they were foreign movies, and B, because they had to do with what used to be the American enemy. For example, if you are a child in America and you grew up having to practice hiding underneath a school desk because some country is going to bomb you. Imagine that that country, now the war is over and everything, but now that country has, in their studios of movies, has produced a monster that attacks cities and towns and countries. That's pretty terrifying. Like I say time and time again, horror is allegory. It's a way that we can open up a window and see this surreal world where these horrifying make-believe things happen. And it's an easy way, it's an abstract enough story that we can process it and see what is really going on in our real world. So for example, with Godzilla. Godzilla is an allegory of Japanese nuclear warfare, about pollution and the toxicity of the ever-growing technology. And what would happen if, well, this is what the story is about, is what would happen if all of the nuclear waste goes into the ocean and seeps into some prehistoric animal still floating out there in the waters, and then it increases in size and then attacks the entire country of Japan. Well, it's an allegory of we need to be aware of our earth and of our country and of how we treat the land. A lot of people see that now and they're like, oh yeah, well obviously it's because of that. But back then it was a really poetic and beautiful story to tell that people didn't really grasp at first watch. A lot of these horror movies you don't understand at first watch about what could the allegory be, and that's something that I'm always looking out for, which is probably why horror movies don't scare me that much, because I'm always trying to decode about what could this movie be about societal wise. Let's just go with it. Oh, and you know what? One of my favorite points that Stephen King makes is that the same people who don't want their children to watch Scooby-Doo or to, watch any of his movies when they're like 12 or 13 or even like 14, those are the same parents that read their children Grimm's fairy tales. They're the same parents that read Hansel and Gretel to their children. So what is going on there? You don't like the recent horror, but you're totally fine with reading them that this witch in the forest is going to eat them and put them in an oven and burn them. There's a hypocrisy to it all. If your child is into spooky stuff and you're not, just let them do their own thing. Or conversely, if you are a parent who really loves horror and your kid just can't handle it and doesn't want anything to do with it, step back a little. So, Danse Macabre, at the end of the day, at the end of the book, I'm not going to spoil anything, of course, but by the end of the book, the gist of the whole novel is that scary things happen, that is fine. How do we deal with the horror? How do we, therapeutically transmit that horror or those scary thoughts into a work of art, whether that be a book or a movie or a song or anything like that. Any kind of art form, maybe a painting. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a sign of depression or even trauma. Sometimes people just like to make art that's darker because that's just the way that they can express themselves best. People like to refrain from darkness, and I don't know why. Because the people who don't want to acknowledge that there is horror or that there is darkness in the world, I don't understand it. Because to me, the more that I face that fear, the more that I can live with myself and live with the surrounding scary world. If it doesn't make sense to you, then it doesn't make sense to you. I'm not here to try to convince you to like the horror genre. I would like for all of you watching to put in the comments below, what is your favorite Stephen King novel, or what is a book of his that you don't like, or yeah, just do a free-for-all. Tell me what book you love the most, tell me what book of his you hate the most. Also tell me what Stephen King movies you love and which ones do you hate. Tell me what Stephen King movie you like best that's not directed by him, and which do you like best that is directed by him. I really love the miniseries Rose Red, which he directed. I think it gets a bit corny, it's a little dated, but I love it so much. I love Stephen King. I actually tried to read The Stand when I was 9 years old. It didn't work out well, but I tried. When I was old enough to read at that level, I immediately started digging into his stories. I still love to read them today, and I would really be interested in knowing what book of his you all think that I should read next. Now, I'll give you a few options. I've been thinking about reading Carrie, Pet Cemetery, and Misery. So if you guys could help me choose between those three, that would be really great because I'm having a hard time choosing. With all of that being said, I hope you liked this video. I do suggest that you watch my first 3 videos on this channel. Oh yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought about this makeup look. I really like it. I think I look bomb. Oh, and happy Halloween! I hope you have an amazing Halloween. I hope you stay safe. I hope you don't do anything crazy. If you're having a big party during these times, I don't really know what to say to that. Just try to stay safe, try to get tested, try to keep your distance. If it's not too cold outside, maybe try to stay outside. I mean, I don't know. I'm not here to tell you what to do. You live your own life. Just try to be safe during these times. Things aren't 100% yet. Just keep that in mind. I don't know, maybe a good COVID Halloween would just to be like take all of your friends and go to a spooky cemetery. I mean, maybe try to do some sort of outside event. Oh yeah, and don't forget to check out my bookstagram, my book Instagram called The Grand Budapest Book. That's where I spend most of my time if I'm not making a video here on YouTube. So if you have any questions for me there, go ahead and check it out. But if you're not a big fan of the horror genre, on my bookstagram I do read other things besides horror that you can check out there too. So thank you once again, and I will see you in November. See ya! Happy Halloween!